When I was 15, my dad passed away. Although internally it hit me harder than anything I've ever experienced, I didn't really react outwardly, and I genuinely did not repress it intentionally or anything. It just happened. I didn't even cry the day my mom told me, and it's not like I have a depressed conscience or didn't have a reason to cry, such as resentment or abandonment or something. The opposite, actually. I love my dad with my whole entire heart and soul, and he was an incredible father who was never anything but kind, caring, and compassionate towards me. And inside I was absolutely crushed, like I wished for a long time that I could have gone with him wherever we go next. I've always thought it had something to do with the emotional juxtaposition of it not feeling real that he was gone, but also that I had accepted it as an inevitability in the near future a while before it actually happened. The reasons for which I'd rather not delve into in depth. It was something I carried a ton of guilt about. I kept saying things to myself like, he loved you so much and you can't even cry for him. What is wrong with you? What kind of son are you? Do you even deserve such a devoted and loving dad? And shit like that. I was really beginning to hate myself that I couldn't cry for him despite the inner pain I was feeling at his absence and loss, and the fact I didn't get to say goodbye and tell him again how much I love him. This went on for about 2 years till I was 17 when it all suddenly changed. Sometime that year, seemingly out of nowhere, I am telling you, my dad visited me in my dreams to comfort me and say goodbye. I don't remember the exact content of my dream, or the specific words spoken, but it was absolutely as real as the waking reality I live in every day. It felt nothing like any other dream or nightmare I'd ever had. Not even lucid dreams can touch how real this experience was. He was there, and I remember chasing him down because I saw him walking on a sidewalk in the town I'm from, and getting to him and just hugging him really tight. And I distinctly remember the confusion in my brain because I knew he had been gone, but also he was here. I was telling him how much I love him and how much I miss him, and I swear I was holding on to him for dear life. I could smell him too. He always smelled so good to me. And his voice was so clear, not like how things are in dreams for me usually, where voices are there but usually sort of indistinct, or as if they're in air that's thicker than usual air, so kinda distorted. And then, just like that, I was awake in my bed in my room and alone. I remember being seriously panicked and confused because I didn't understand why I was in my room instead of wherever I was with my dad just moments ago. It even took me a few seconds to fully realize that I was back in the present, and I started trying to recall the dream, but of course it was fleeting. And I remember also realizing that I was panicked because of the realization hitting me that my dad wasn't here again, but he'd been so close just literally moments ago. So after a second, I realized that my face, head, and chest felt kinda weird, and it took a few moments, but it occurred to me why. In my sleep I had clearly been full-blown crying, like bawling type crying, and it had to have been for a while too. I have no way of knowing for exactly how long, but my eyes were swollen and tired, like they would be after an extended cry. My cheeks, chin, and neck were positively covered in streaks upon streaks, both dried and fresh tears. My nose was stuffy and my chest felt like it had been sobbing and doing the whole double inhale sigh thing our bodies do when crying to reduce our heart rate and calm us down. I'm absolutely convinced my dad visited me to give me comfort and closure, and over the years he visited me a handful of other times since that first one. I have never been particularly religious, but between those visits from my dad, one other experience when I was around 19 where I saw something I've never seen again but that I absolutely did not hallucinate, I can't help but be certain there is something beyond to look forward to. I'm the type of person who is always heavily leaned towards healthy skepticism, and in my beliefs and worldviews I am consistently leveraged towards evidence-based conclusions. On the other hand, I also refuse to allow the dogma that people conflate science with to blind me to my intuition, gut, and the truths which present themselves before me. Therefore, I can't help but be a believer, even if I do genuinely think that 99% of paranormal evidence is bullshit. I have this weird incident from when I was a toddler that my parents told me about a few years ago. So when I was younger, I had a lot of imaginary friends, like, I was that type of toddler. But when I went to the US to my relative's house, I had like a bunch of new imaginary friends who apparently were from different parts of the US. And I used to sit at the dining table and not let anybody else sit there because I was like, my imaginary friend's sitting there. And this all sounds like normal to an extent, because it could just be my imagination as a kid. But I described all of those friends' backgrounds to my parents like I named so many US states and cities that I, as a 3-year-old who didn't even know half of India's cities, I'm Indian, would have never known myself. I'm 15 now, and I've always had a fascination for the paranormal, even though I'm a big skeptic and non-believer most of the time. The paranormal is something that has always really interested me. This was one of the most concrete experiences I've had that were very weird, so I was just wondering if anybody had any logical explanation to this. My parents were sleeping this morning, and I was up studying. I went to the restroom and locked the door, but it still opened and was left ajar, but I'm sure I had locked it. Then, once I stepped out of the restroom, this small black bead was thrown into my room. I genuinely cannot make this up. I don't know where it came from. To make matters worse, it was 5 a.m. and super dark, and no one was up, so I don't know where that black bead came from and how it was thrown so aggressively into my room if no one was throwing it. The cherry on top was when I confined myself to the corner of my room because I was so freaked out. When I turned around, I felt something sharp on my lower back, almost as if someone was poking my back. I've always believed in the paranormal, but I've never experienced it. Something tells me it might have been my grandfather because he used to tease me a lot, but I don't know. Could it just be me overthinking? Update. The bead disappeared. I left it on the floor because I wasn't sure if I should touch it. No one other than me has been in my room, neither have I mopped it or anything as I've been out all day. When I came back, it was gone, and it really freaked me out. The thing is, I really thought it was him, but he died more than 10 years ago, so if he had a message for me, I'm not sure what it would be, as he would have given it by now. It was pretty aggressive, like I was taken aback by it. My grandpa and I weren't super close as he lived pretty far away, but when we met, we had some fun times together and made some memories. I was quite little when he died, so I didn't get to know him as much. My parents say I am a lot like him by nature, quiet and introverted. So I, 19M, have been experiencing weird and cryptic dreams for as long as I can remember. Sometimes they're spread apart by years, and sometimes they're spread apart by months. At the earliest time I can remember this, I was 6-ish, 7-ish, and was sleeping in my great-grandmother's house, and had this weird dream that was so vivid and surreal that it has been burnt into my memory. And it starts off, I'm standing in front of her house, and there's this big tree that has a hole in it, and I feel something beckoning me to go there alongside this loud, booming voice talking to me. And I can't remember what he was saying, but it's as if he was telling me where to go. And as I go through this tree, I'm standing in the room I'm sleeping in, but it's not exactly my room. And then I wake up numb in terror and frozen in place, like it's sleep paralysis. And I see this dark figure standing over me, and then it leaves minutes later, and I regain my ability to move. The next instance of this happened in my home 2 years later. I'm in a military family, I move around a lot. In my home in Tennessee, I have another cryptic dream of something standing in the field behind my house, and I end up hearing the voice again beckoning me towards it. And as soon as I get close to it, I wake up and end up in the exact same state as I was before, seeing the same figure again. And then a few minutes later, I regain the ability to move. It happened a few more times over the next few months, each dream equally as off-putting and cryptic, and then it stopped for about 5-ish years. Until about 2 months ago, when I had another dream about this figure and a small deformed boy conversating. And then I wake up in that state and see the figure once again. And about a week ago, I was doing some potentially very dumb things that involve contacting spirits and such with my friends who live in a very off-putting house, and I was told after my final dream it will all make sense and it would leave. What does this mean? What could this be? Had anyone else had similar experiences? My belief in ghosts, paranormal, and other realms has never been something I've put much thought into. I didn't necessarily believe, or not believe. However, I had an experience in summer 2022 that is hard to explain as anything other than paranormal. I will explain briefly the experience below, but my main concern is health issues, physical and mental, I have had since this experience. I'm wondering if an experience like I had can cause lasting health issues, and if so, I am open to any recommendations for healing. My partner and I were staying at a friend's home while they were away traveling. From the moment we arrived, strange things were happening, and I nearly instantly did not feel well. I could not really describe it, but I just kept telling my partner that I felt weird and cloudy. Over our time there, we had issues with Wi-Fi connection, insects, AC, all written off as it was an older home in Texas. The more notable things include the following: me getting locked out of the house twice, one with a sliding back door which I wrote off as me accidentally shifting the lock when opening the door, but the second time was with the deadbolt of the front door turning behind me after quickly running to my car to get something. My normally very regular period not coming on time. To the extent of me taking a pregnancy test, it was so late. Me feeling fine and normal when not in the house, only to return and feel weird again. A visitor feeling a cold gust in the home while the AC was out in the middle of a Texas summer, over 100 degrees outside. The scariest thing? My partner waking up with a red handprint on his shoulder that lasted for about a week. There were blisters at the end of the 3 middle fingers. He also had neck pain to the extent of needing to see a chiropractor for the first time in his life. Flickering lights in the same location as the cold gust when we decided to finally go stay in a hotel. We also had many technical issues trying to book the hotel. Once we finally made it to the hotel, I showered right away and immediately felt better and had my period start in less than an hour. Neither of us were really believers in anything like this as mentioned, and it wasn't until after we left and reflected on all the strange things that happened while we were there that we considered the house being haunted. Our friends have never mentioned anything like this happening. They lived in the home for another 1.5 years after we stayed, and speak of this time very fondly. We chose not to tell them about the experience. A few weeks after this, I started to have some pain in my abdomen. After months of home remedies for what I thought was a bladder infection and many appointments with an acupuncturist trying to heal, I learned that I had an infection in my uterus on my IUD. I had the IUD removed and treated the infection as prescribed by my OBGYN. A few months later, the infection returned and I ended up on a double round of antibiotics. I have continued to have pain in my abdomen. I believe this is due to the negative effect of the antibiotics on my gut and digestive tract. I have also had pretty strong depression and anxiety for this time. These are things I have had minor issues with in the past prior to the experience, but they have felt so disruptive to my life over the past year. I'm a pretty health-conscious person and invest a lot of time, energy, and money into my health. And the culmination of these issues drove me to needing to take a leave from work, which has been a very defeating and frustrating experience. I have started a gut healing protocol and some antidepressants this year, and I'm feeling better physically and mentally, but there is a part of me that wonders if all of this is connected to the experience from the summer of 2022.